What's up guys, you're watching Li-Fi TCG. Today's video is a update to my Pauper Tortured Existence deck. It seems to be one of the more popular video topics on my channel in terms of like views and likes and stuff, so I hope you guys enjoy this. Pretty big update potentially to the archetype is that we're completely shifting the colors. So as you know, in the past I've updated quite a few videos on the Tortured Existence deck that are all about the black-green version. So the things that I would say characterize the black-green version as opposed to the black-red version, which I'll talk about in a minute, you play the green spells to dig for Tortured Existence. So the most important one is Commune with the Gods. 2 mana, look at your top 5, choose a creature or enchantment and send the rest to the graveyard. And the other upside to playing green in your Tortured Existence deck is that you get access to a lot of creatures that have uniquely strong effects. So you can play creatures like Wickerbough, Elder, or Caustic Caterpillar that destroy artifacts or enchantments. You can play Spore Frog to turn off combat. You can play creatures like Grozzen Tusker, which provide value, search for lands. These are the upsides to playing a version of the deck with black and green. But while the green version is the most well known, which seems kind of natural, right? Because Tortured Existence is so good with Golgari Brownscale, and Golgari Brownscale is green. Playing more than 2 colors in Pauper is a little bit difficult because the mana is not great. Yeah, so the black-green version is like the most obvious and well known, but there's also been a lot of development done on a version of Tortured Existence that is black and red. So the main upsides to playing red is that you get access to a different set of digging spells. So the first one of those is Faithless Looting, very strong card, banned in Modern now, and then also to a slightly lesser extent, Thrill of Possibilities. So how do these cards compare to the green versions? So the upside to something like Commune with the Gods is that it looks at a lot of cards. 2 mana, look at the top 5. So Thrill of Possibility will only let you see 2 new cards. Faithless Looting will let you look at potentially 4 new cards, but only after you've spent 4 mana on it. So those are the main downsides to the red cards compared to the green ones. But the red cards have many other upsides as well. So firstly, Faithless Looting, you can do something with it for only 1 mana. That's obviously strong. It has flashback, and because you're a dredge deck, you can mill into this and then flash it back for value. That's also good. It changes the texture of your hand more. No matter what you get with Commune with the Gods, it's still just replacing itself. You only get 1 new card. So if the rest of your hand is bad, it can't improve the quality of your hand by that much. Whereas Faithless Looting gives you 2 new cards to exchange for your 2 worst cards. So overall the impact on the quality of your hand can be greater. But the most significant reason for playing Thrill and Faithless Looting in Tortured Existence compared to Commune with the Gods is that because they actually discard cards from your hand as part of the effect resolving, they have a really strong synergy with Madness. So a lot of people who have worked on the black-red version of the deck say that it's less reliant on Tortured Existence, which is a statement that deserves to be unpacked a little bit, I think. In my experience, what that means is that because you have all these other ways to discard things, you're less likely to brick on your madness cards because you have other ways to enable them other than just the four tortured existence. So when you think about it in that sense, then yes, red-black is less reliant on having tortured existence, but as you already know if you've been watching my previous videos, is that I've completely cut Grave Scrabbler from green-black for entirely that reason. And if you're just coming to this video completely new to the archetype, or like from what you've previously seen, that might seem like a strange move, because Grave Scrabbler is just seen as like one of the core cards for this archetype. Like, it seems so good to use it with Tortured Existence, but it does brick a lot, and well, when you don't have so many ways to discard it, and the card advantage you get from it is not essential, I don't think. You have other ways to recoup that if you build your deck in the right way. So yeah, so I wouldn't say that the black-red version is less reliant on Tortured Existence. Just playing these cards in your deck means that you can play Grave Scrabbler as well, and it will be bad a much lower amount of the time. That's how I would sort of characterize that phrasing. And yeah, it's up to you, like, whether that may or may not be better than the green spells, but Faithless Looting is definitely a very powerful card. It has a lot of strengths compared to Commune that I've already described. And then also, like, while I don't think it's super essential, Grave Scrabbler is a pretty good card with Tortured Existence, so being able to build your deck in a way that its downside, which is that if you can't discard it, it's a 4-mana 2/2 that does nothing. If you can build your deck in a way that that downside is mitigated, then it becomes a much better card. So there are a lot of upsides to playing this red-black version. The downsides of playing the red-black version is that you don't get access to all of the green creatures. You don't have the Spore Frog to block combat, which is a pretty useful, almost essential ability in some matchups. Red and black have no way to destroy enchantments, so that's a pretty big hole as well. There's no red creature that can search for a land, like there's no red Sakura Tribe Elder or Krosan Tusker or anything like that. So yeah, that's the downside to red. But what people have sort of figured out recently is that the mana kind of works if you play 3 colors. Like you play mainly the black-red skeleton or like shell, and then you just have a very small splash for the tertiary color, just so you can play fog and maybe some like enchantment removal. So the version that people have been recommending mostly online is Mardu, because in white you can play Kami of False Hope instead of Spore Frog. If you want to destroy enchantments, you don't need green. You can play like Wispmere or something else in white, and then you also have the option of playing like Custody Squire or Romancer or something like that in the sideboard as well. So white has some upsides. The problem with playing Mardu is that you don't get any creature that can destroy both artifacts and enchantments. You have to play like a mix of like Wispmere and Ingot Chewers, which can kind of stretch your sideboard a little bit too much. And you have no way to cast Golgari Brownscales because you have no green mana, so that can be a little bit annoying sometimes as well. But the whether you want to play Jund or Mardu, both of those versions would be almost identical for the purposes of this discussion. It's just like a little footnote that you can consider for yourself later. So I'll get into the full list. For non-creature spells, we have these 12, so the 4 Faithless Looting, the 4 Thrill of Possibility, for Tortured Existence, and also a unique aspect to the list that the black-green version did not have is for Terminate. So the mana is good enough to enable this to work. You would prefer to have a creature as your removal spell, because then you can return it with Tortured Existence, obviously. And when it's not good, you can discard it with Tortured Existence to exchange it for something else. I mean, that's the whole reason why we're playing the Tortured Existence deck, so that we can do stuff with our creatures. But there's not really any good creature substitute for this. Like, Shriekmaw might be close, but all we have is stuff like Fume Spitter, or Ruthless Ripper, or Faithless Butcher, which all have their own like significant downsides. Like Fume Spitter and Ruthless Ripper are like quite unreliable as removal in a lot of situations. Faithless Butchers cost a lot of mana and they can kill it. So Terminate is just like the best all-round removal, and we just have to kind of suck up the fact that it's not a creature. So yeah, it's a little bit strange coming from the like mentality of the green-black version, where not necessarily the mentality of the green-black version, but just like the way that the deck is normally built, where you're trying to maximize everything being a creature. Yeah, it's just like a slightly different way of thinking about it. Like, maybe that isn't true. Like, maybe this effect is good enough that the fact that it's not a creature is acceptable. But yeah, there's a lot of, gives you outs to a lot of things that are problematic if you don't have cards like this. Like if you're playing against Sunscape Familiar or Thermo Alchemist, or there's not really any good answers to those on creatures. So yeah, having the Terminate's not so bad. Then getting into the creatures, we have the same dredges as what I played in the green-black version. The 3 Brownscale and 2 Stinkweed Imp. And we also have 4 Crypt Rats. Yeah, so the Crypt Rats is like one of the best cards. Just reset the board versus any like mid-range weenie deck like Delver or Boros. Wipe all the elves, you know, blah blah blah, and then you sort of like need these 5 dredges as part of your engine. So that's no different to the versions of the deck I've showed you before. In the other creatures, so sort of interesting compared to the previous version that I've showed you, the black-green. 4 Monstrous Carabid and 4 Grave Scrabbler. So the main reason why I didn't like playing Grave Scrabbler in black-green versions without the extra discard spells is that it's too inconsistent. Like, you can't make use of it in situations where you don't have Tortured Existence available, which means that it's a little bit too weak overall to play, in my opinion. But in this version of the deck we have the 4 Looting and the 4 Thrill, so we have lots of other ways to discard it, even if we don't have Tortured Existence or it got discarded or countered or anything like that. But then the issue is that because we're playing much fewer green mana sources, we can't really afford to play cards like Sakura Tribe-Elder or Krosan Tusker, all of those green cards that search for lands, because the mana is just not quite good enough. The other thing is that we also have a slightly higher emphasis on things that aren't creatures. The 4 Terminate, for instance. So there's going to be many situations where there isn't going to be like an ideal creature that you can return with your Grave Scrabbler. You would rather that you just use this to draw a card, because you want to find either a removal spell or a land, or even in the case that you haven't found your Tortured Existence yet, right? Like you could have a sequence where you go turn 1, cycle this, then, well, it won't work on turn 2 because you won't have enough mana, but then you go like turn 3, loot, it's 2 mana, madness this, get this back, then you cycle it again. So you're like going through your deck trying to find your Tortured Existence, or you make that exact same play because you're using this to try and dig for like lands or terminates or things like that. So that's why you need such a high number of this cycler compared to the versions of the deck, the black-green versions that only played like 1 or 2 copies of Horror of the Broken Lands. It's because you need a way to convert Grave Scrabbler triggers into something useful when you don't have useful things to return, other creatures in your graveyard to return. Yeah, that's it. The other thing is that it does all the good things that the Horror did in the other build of the deck. Like if you have Tortured Existence on, like you can pay 2 mana to cycle any creature, all of those good things. So you might wonder why Monstrous Carabid is being played instead of Horror of the Broken Lands, because Horror of the Broken Lands is so much more synergistic with the deck as a creature. You know, whenever you discard a card, it gets +2/+1. The reason for that is just the way that the mana is built. The hybrid cycling matters a lot, and you don't really cast it that much either way anyway. So you'll see how that works out when I talk about the mana base. But yeah, the hybrid cycling cost is really important. Then the last few cards are 2 Gorgon Recluse. The other people working on this deck still don't really seem to like this card much, but I think it's really good. Having the extra madness cards as well with the looting and the thrill and stuff is pretty solid. And then you have thrill to put this into play at instant speed, which can be like a pretty big blowout mid-combat as well. Then the last 2 creatures are the 2 Spore Frog and 1 Gurmag Angler. So this is, Gurmag Angler is just like a super efficient attacker and blocker. Pretty high impact when you can loop it and dredge into it and all that for only 1 mana. And then Spore Frog, one of the main reasons for playing 3 colors. Just when you're trying to beat like Boggles or Heroic and things like that, you really need the fog creature. So the mana, we'll get into that now. It's mainly black-red, because you just for the drawing the looting spells and the Terminate. So the red-black bounce land, playing 4 of those. That's the main reason why the hybrid cycling is good, because you have all these red sources that you can't otherwise make good use of often. So having a way to convert that red mana into a new card is pretty useful with the hybrid cycling on the Carabids. Then we also have 4 of the black-red gain land, the counterplay tap, Cameron Life, Bloodfell Caves, and then 1 mountain. And for the green lands, we just have 2 of the gain land, so 2 jungle hollow, 1 forest. Then we have 4 Ash Barrens and 6 swamps, so that's 22 lands. Yeah, so that's the list. Overall, the consistency of Faithless Looting plus Grave Scrabbler seems to satisfy the demands of cycling through your deck and finding lands and things when you need them, just as adequately as something like Krosan Tusker does in the green versions. So I'm pretty satisfied with that. The mana works alright. You can normally find the splash when you need it, which is mostly for fog locking, which usually happens around like turn 4 or so anyway. It's not like you desperately need to have green on turn 1, so you have the 4 Ash Barrens and the 1 basic and the 2 tap lands to find it. I think that all works fine. We tried to like cast in all the numbers on the Discord to figure it out, and I think it all works okay. Just to give you some comparison, I think the list that the person who originally came up with the 3-color idea is using is like the mana base is exactly the same, except maybe it's got the white splash instead of the green. They play the 2 fog creatures main, 4 Carabid, 4 Scrabbler as well, 4 Crypt Rats, the same dredge package, 4 TE obviously, and 4 Looting, and I think 4 Terminate as well. So they played, I don't think it was all 4 Thrill of Possibility, I think it might have been only 2. And then they played, instead of these 5 cards, 2 Thrill of Possibility, 2 Gorgon and 1 Angler. I think this was like 2 Lightning Axe, 2 2 more cycling creatures, so they were playing 2 horrors as well. And then I can't remember what the last card was, but yeah. Basically, I felt that having the extra looting was much better than having a card like Lightning Axe, which is pretty ineffective in a lot of matchups anyway. In terms of having more Madness enablers, Madness enablers, I just felt like maxing out on the Thrill was better. But if you think that Lightning Axe is better, that's something else to consider. And then I think that having 2 more Madness cards, when you are playing 4 Looting and 4 Thrill, I think that like 6 Madness cards feels like about the right number to use. Because you want to be able to make plays like if you go like turn 1 Swamp, turn 2 Carnarium, bounce your Swamp, and then turn 3 you have this, you have like Carnarium Swamp, so you pay 1, float black, and then you loot, and then you draw 2, and then you can hit either Recluse or Scrabbler and get value off it. Just having the Gorgons as like an extra way to get value when you make that play, to do that with a little bit more consistency, it seemed like a thing that was worth having. And I just really like this card. I think it's really good in the deck. Just having a, like, you have the value kind of Scrabbler. Like, obviously you don't get as much value, but it's still a free card with Tortured Existence, and it just has such a huge impact on the board. A lot of the time your opponent has to really go out of their way to get around it. So yeah, and I really like the Angler as well. I think the 1-of Angler is really strong. So that's the list. For the sideboard, oh no, I think the yeah, that's what the other main deck card was. They're playing 1 Faerie Macabre main. That's something that's tempting for me. I think if we want to beat Tron, I think having Faerie Macabre is really important. The reason why I'm currently not playing any main is because I don't know if like 2 Faerie Macabre main is enough to make a difference, and I don't think it's really necessary against like Mystic Sanctuary stuff. I think it's a little bit low impact there and not really the thing that decides the game. But again, that's something you can use it for as well. So yeah, in the sideboard, definitely play Faerie Macabres. You can play more, or you should play more of the fog creature. Then you have like some artifact enchantment destruction. Pyroblast is another good card that you get from playing the red splash, because one of the most difficult things about playing Tortured Existence against Tron is specifically the card Dinroga Horror. So having a way to counter that is really good. And then in terms of removal, the new card from the new Theros set, Mogis' Favor, is really interesting to me. It's like an aura, enchanted creature gets +2/-1. and it has escape. So you can potentially escape it multiple times to kill a bunch of Spellstone sprites and stuff, so that's pretty interesting. But yeah, apart from the Pyroblast, I wouldn't expect the sideboard to be too different to what I was playing in the black-green list. So yeah, stylistically it's like a little bit different to green-black because of the way that you use your card advantage to just draw cards more often. When you have cards like Sakura Tributter or Croson Tusker in your deck, you're basically incentivized to like dredge as much as you can, because no matter you're always going to have like a effect that you can get back that you want, whether that's like value from Croson Tusker or just using that to like develop your mana more, or if you want to get like a removal, like you always have those options available. Whereas with this list, you can't reliably get removal or lands through dredging, so you often just have to draw cards instead. So you have to like think a little bit more about when to dredge and when to not. Sometimes the people working on this say that like they characterize that as like an upside, like you don't have to dredge, which is sort of nonsensical to me. Like if possible, you would want to dredge as much as you can, because you're putting cards in your graveyard, which gives you more options, and you're gaining life for free. So like obviously you would want to do it as much as possible. The reason not to do it is because like it gives your deck more other powerful options, specifically like Terminate and the Faithless Looting and the Thrill and stuff. So yeah, you have to think a bit more about like how to sequence this deck when you want to draw and when you want to dredge. It's like a decision that you have to make like multiple times per turn as you like draw step, and then you like activate your Scrabbler, return the Carabid, and then cycle it. Like, yeah, it's a little bit more tricky in that sense, but overall I think this could be an upgrade to the version that's just black-green. Like I think the decks are very similar, like in terms of like structure and strategy and all of that. Like, so you have the same, you have 40, you have 8 like digging spells to get through your deck to find it. That's the same. You have 5 dredges and then 4 Crypt Rats. That's exactly the same. 2 Spore Frog is like the same. Then 2 Grave Scrabbler, 2 Gorgon Recluse was in that deck as well. I played the Angler in that deck as well. The mana base is like pretty similar. Slightly worse in this version, obviously, because of the 3 colors. So then all that's left to compare is like these cards, right? So instead of these 12 Grave Scrabbler, like one of the Grave Scrabblers would be a kind of Sanitarium Skeleton, probably, in terms of removal. Maybe you have to play like Fume Spitter or something, which, again, depending on how much of an upgrade the destroy any creature is versus like the drawback of not being able to loop it with tier, sometimes better, sometimes worse. So yeah, 2 Fume Spitters. Then like you're playing 1 or 2 Horror of the Broken Lands. Then in terms of ways to get value, you have like your Croson Tuskers instead. So you can sort of see that like the decks are doing basically the exact same things. There's not really any kind of like magical secret ingredient that makes this deck totally different to the other one. It's just that maybe Grave Scrabbler is a really good card and it's worth like trying to make it the best it can be by having lots of ways to discard it. Yeah, that's basically how you can sum it up. So yeah, I don't have any sideboard cards to show you, but hopefully you were listening and you can sort of figure that out. But yeah, so a pretty big departure to add like an entire tertiary color to a deck in Pauper, but it seems to work pretty well. And the madness effects really do become quite a lot stronger. So yeah, that's the Jund brackets, possibly Mardu, Tortured Existence. I hope that was informative and you give it a try and you let me know how it goes. That's Li-Fi TCG signing out.